Good dash.
Thank you.
Okay. I think it's, and it always takes time to make adjustments to your gameplay, but I think it's a lot of similar stuff that we talked about earlier. I do like some of the adjustments you made in close quarters with like Revenge. I think that's really good, fast move. Yeah, so you wanna keep me cornered, and you wanna try not to like. You go for, it's okay to make reads, but I think something that you can work on is sort of doing like option coverage of like maintaining me in the corner, like keeping me in the corner, as opposed to just being like, I hope this hits. Because if you like, so sometimes like you were doing a lot of like pretty aggressive like reads that like if they don't hit, then you give up your stage control. What you can do instead is, if I'm in the corner, you can do kind of like option coverage of like either one, like you can wait and again like react to what I do, or you can do like an attack, like say, I really like to do like early on you did like an up air, like when I'm on platform, and it's like, even if that doesn't hit, even if it hits shield, you're still in a really good position. You're maintaining your stage control, right? So I think that's one thing to work on. The other thing is, I think one thing I mentioned earlier, which is, again, sometimes you're like doing a lot of these aerials kind of like antsy, kind of anticipatory, like you're hoping that I like run into it. And that's not bad. Obviously, if you have a read on me, like my movement, like I'm doing that. But I think as like adaptation, if you're seeing, hey, this isn't working, then you need to be a bit more conservative with when you throw out hitboxes. And you need to throw them out more like, okay, I'm right next to you, this is going to hit, instead of like, okay, I hope you run into this.
Yeah. Kind of, one thing is, why you for like canceling out your projectiles with my aerials. I'm also kind of worried about that putting me in end lag and you being able to punish that.
No, for sure. So that's going to be like a distance thing, and it's going to be, ideally you should be reacting, because all of my projectiles are I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm stupid, Van. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, so that's going to be a distance thing. And how to put this?
I think you need to switch off maybe.
Yeah. How do I put this? If I'm far enough away, you can always do it safely. Oh, right. I remember what I was going to say. Ideally, you should be doing it as a reaction. So, like, my 3 projectiles are obviously, bomb, fire arrow, and boomerang. Fire arrow, as like the fastest you can throw it out is frame 16, and then obviously there's travel range. That is reactable. Yeah. So, boomerang frame 33 to come out. That is reactable. Bomb toss is the only one that's like not reactable at close range because it's like frame 7. But the bomb pose is reactable. It's like frame 40. Yeah. So ideally, like, it's like, okay, if you need to figure out like, hey, do I need to be throwing out an aerial? Like, you should you should ideally be reacting. Like you should be looking at like my character. And again, I think part of it is probably just like you know, people need to get used to playing against Young Link. I mean, there's not very many, so like just recognizing the startup frame data because it is reactable. So then that's the question of like, okay, do I throw out the aerial or not? Because I mentioned this because there were instances where you were throwing out the aerial and there wasn't any projectile you were canceling out. Again, it just seemed like, hey, I hope that you run into this. But maybe, again, like to your point, maybe you were thinking there was going to be an aerial, but then to my point, that's when like you should be like looking and see if like you're reacting to a projectile. So, right, another thing we hadn't really touched on, but we did talk about earlier, is you do have a shield habit. Ideally, like you do have to shield, like, but you should really only be shielding when you need to, right? When like you anticipate that you're going to get hits by a normal. If there's no hitbox out, you really don't need to be shielding. So you can obviously shield in close quarters where it's like unreactable and you're expecting your opponent to like mash and like an attack on you. But a lot of times you're sort of shielding at this mid-range where like there's no attack coming and therefore you're just losing the advantage that you get from not being in shield, which is movement, which is the ability to throw out attacks, right? So I do think that's one thing you need to watch out for. The other thing is your recovery. You sort of, I think something to recognize is when you are forced to go low and you need to up B, it happened off stream as well. You kind of hang out there and you get hits. Your up B gives you super armor and it also snaps to ledge. So honestly, you should be up being either that or like air dodging it, right? Like you should be using that option earlier because not doing an option is costlier, like in terms of like recovery, right? Like there's really no downside to doing that up B early when you're going to get hit by an aerial. Like you're gonna snap to ledge and you're gonna get super armor. Like the cost of not doing it is you just get hit. And you can also think about using like fast falls as well, because I see you a lot like sort of like just slow falling off stage, and that costs you a lot of frames. It lets people get in position to aerial you. There was one other. Oh, right. So you also, I think you, out of disadvantage, you are very prone to mashing Nair out of disadvantage. And Nair isn't bad on shield, but when you're doing such a high slow fall Nair, then it's bad.
Definitely got punished for that.
Yeah, so usually, and again, it's not bad to do it, sometimes, but you're doing it often. So really what you want to do instead, more often, is use like a jump, and then you drift, and then you can decide whether to do like a landing aerial.
Yeah.
So those were a few things. The other thing too, and again, and this fits into the shield habit. Like you were trying to get in, and you were doing a lot of rolls. But like roll is good. It's like roll to get in. It's almost like you have to think about it as a read, right? It's like if you're gonna roll in, it's because you're reading that I'm going to like use an attack to where you are, not where you're rolling to. And therefore I'm going to whiff, and therefore you're going to get a punish. But you were rolling in at these distances where like I'm not even close enough for you to cross me up, and therefore I can cover the roll in like just as easily as I could cover you like staying in place. Again, like at least in the zoner matchup.
Yeah.
So again, what you need to think about is what I was trying to talk about earlier off stream, which was against a zoner, your first challenge is to get close enough to then threaten normals.
Yeah.
Once you're in that range, you really don't want to be shielding unless you need to. Like literally, if you're going to get hit, then you shield. If you're not about to get hit, you need to be out of shield. You need to be threatening like movement, like normals, like grabs, like command grabs, right? But yeah, otherwise without that threat, it's very easy to just like keep you contained on the ground, right? And like there's really like no threat from your side. So that's why you need to be out of shield, because your movement, it's the movement with the aerials that makes them a lot like more of a threat. And finally, again, playing into what I said last game about like you go for some of these reads when you can be going for option coverage. That happened when you were ledge trapping me. You were throwing out a lot of these like up tilts at ledge, when really you could be reacting to. They really seem like reads. Like instead of reacting to like my movement and then again like doing like say like a fade back up air if you think I'm trying to like double jump in, you could do like you should be reacting to like how I'm drifting. If I'm drifting in with the jump, then you can also like when you have the ground, you're essentially an advantage against someone in the air usually, like because you can reposition better than they can, and you have like you can cover like usually like using a hitbox from the ground like rising is better than people's like falling hitboxes. Like sure, Young Link has down air, but down air is easy to cover from the side, right? Young Link has sure Nair and forward air, but like your hitboxes are bigger than those. So if I'm in the air and I'm trying to get down to the ground, instead of you needing to read that with an up tilt, you can just shark my movement space always just a little bit horizontally to where I'm going to fall to, and then do like a rising aerial out of that, whether that's forward air, up air, or back air. And that way, if you get that hit, then you put them back at ledge, and then you rinse repeat. That's how you keep your advantage. That's how you keep people at ledge. But again, what I'm seeing is you're kind of going for these reads of like, okay, let's hope that they like run into this, like they fall into this up tilt, right? And then because it doesn't hit, then you're giving up your positional advantage because then they have time to get past you.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
some of it's just like it's like characters that can throw out so many projectiles that kind of get in the not able to kind of think about what I'm doing as much as if I'm playing a character that doesn't have that option, and I can kind of I feel like I can slow it down more and kind of figure out what they're going to do, whereas it's just harder when there's constantly hitboxes coming out.
No.
And I just not able to kind of process what they're going to do as easily as kind of with characters that
100%. I think that makes sense, and I think again part of it at least is probably matchup familiarity. I think if you play against it more, I think it's a matter of recognition. Maybe, by the way, you can even play these characters and maybe get a feel for them yourself. I've played every character in the game. I'm not saying I'm good with every character in the game, but I have a somewhat of a familiar understanding of like, okay, let's look at the frame data. Like, how do these moves work? How do their movement work? Right? If you practice a little bit of Young Link or whichever zoner that you're having issues with, you can get used to, okay, what are the windows, right? What are the windows where someone can punish you? What are the startup windows, right? And get a visual indication of that, because I 100% agree. I think actually that's the case for me too, even against like non-zoners, playing against just very fast characters that have a lot of pressure, whether I'm playing against like Chrom or Sheik or Joker. Yeah, it can be overwhelming, and then it's like, oh my god, what do I like? I'm trying to react to like 2 seconds ago, and like you're already like hitting me with something else. So I 100% agree, but again, I think part of it is going to just be recognition of like putting yourself in these situations, and again, maybe like playing the characters and seeing what are these like, what is that frame data? What are those like windows, right? So it's like, yeah, I'm throwing a lot of projectiles at you, but so I like again off stream, I was trying to point out, okay, like I threw out Boomerang, I threw out Power Arrow, you shielded them both, great. Now I have nothing, right? Like now, you can go in, and I don't have the spacing, I don't have the frames to safely throw out another projectile. And so then that's when it becomes a mix-up. Like, so it does take some patience to have like the defensive play of projectiles when they're camping you out, and then have the patience to like slowly get in and not go into shield, and like not be baited into shield when you don't have to, and then do the mix-up of, okay, now I can play the game of like, now I can throw out an aerial, and now I actually have some good rock paper scissors calculus of like my aerial will win, right? So I think that's part of it. Does that make sense, or like, or are you thinking about it a different way?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of, and it's like I have played Young Link like in kind of against my friends and stuff, and I just kind of know it. I just kind of hard to, just when there's so much happening, it's hard to kind of think about that at the same time and kind of use that knowledge. Yeah, I personally find myself a lot of times, for me, like what helps me is just repetition. So like if you have like a practice partner that can play Young Link and they can just like keep like throw, like say, it's like, okay, just spam projectiles at me, then you'll get used to the timings, right? You'll get used to the positionings more. I mean, because I think, I can point out some habits, I can point out some like things about how the game works, but then if you're saying, oh my god, well, I just can't keep up with like the pace of the game, I think that's just going to come down to, you probably just need to put in some practice hours and get comfortable with it. Because again, same thing happens to me, like again, when I was getting bopped by like hockey every week, like Sheik, it's like it's a learning of like, oh my god, I am getting pressured so hard. Like how does my brain even process like when her first aerial ends and then he's like up tilting and then he like tomahawk grabbed, and it all happened in the span of like 25 frames, right? So I'm 100% with you. It's very hard to keep up with like fast frame data and like overwhelming pressure. But for me, I'm like, well, listen, here are your options. But then like if you're having trouble keeping up, it's literally just going to be like practice hours, and that's the case for me too. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Makes sense.
Okay. We'll play some more later, but good stuff.
Okay, well, thanks.